Check, check. Mr. Mayor, ready to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I will now call to order the Riverside City Council meeting for Monday, October 20th, 2025, at 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Denning?
Here.
Ms. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Lomatch?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Present.
Mayor Williams?
Here. No absent members. Mr. Manager, any additions or corrections to the agenda as presented?
No, Mr. Mayor. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Joseph and a second for Ms. Lomatch to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Agenda is approved. If you're able, please join us to rise and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll jump right into the agenda. If anyone here would like to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item, we have a section of our meeting where we allow citizen comment. Of this room, please turn this filled-in slip out to the clerk up front. We've all had a chance to look at the meeting minutes from our October 6th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those meeting minutes as published?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Joseph and a second for Mr. Maxfield to approve the meeting minutes from October 6th as published. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We have had a number of slips turned in to speak tonight, but all of the slips turned in are for non-agenda items, so we will do that a little bit later in this meeting. So we'll move into unfinished business, of which we have one ordinance, which will be the second reading, public hearing, and potential adoption for ordinance 25-0-871. Mr. Manager, could you just give us a brief rundown of this before we take action?
This is the second reading of the third quarter supplemental ordinance. There are no changes from the prior reading. Move to approve. Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Denning and a second from Mr. Joseph. The Riverside City Charter allows for an ordinance to be read by title only unless a council member requests otherwise. Madam Clerk, could you please read this ordinance by title only?
Ordinance number 25-0-871, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Riverside, State of Ohio for the period January 1 through December 31, 2025.
All right, I will now open the public hearing for ordinance 25-0-871 at 6:03 p.m. Anyone who wishes to speak on this ordinance, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Hearing no one and seeing no one come forward, I will close the public hearing for ordinance 25-0-871 at 6:03 p.m. Is there any further discussion from members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Denning?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Ms. Lomatch?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes. We'll now move into new business, of which we have two resolutions. The first resolution, Resolution 25-R-3055, is a resolution recognizing the Mad River Lions Club Project Share as a vital community function. Is that about the long and the short of it, Mr. Manager? And I think Sarah's got a comment.
So move.
Okay. We have a motion at least. We don't need you, Josh. Take this one off.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Lomatch and a second from Mr. Denning. This resolution will recognize Mad River Lions Club Project Share as a function that promotes the public health, general welfare, and contentment of the citizens of the city. Do we have any further discussion?
This is for $250, right?
Correct. $250 donation to the Project Share. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And the second resolution, Mr. Manager, could you take us through this one?
Yes, this is a resolution authorizing us to enter into a contract with Axon Enterprises for replacement of all of the tasers in the police department. I want to credit Acting Chief Jackson and her team for all the group they did to pull this quote together. This is a quote that's based off of state bid pricing. Part of the reason it's coming to you now is that the pricing is scheduled to go up before we have our next council meeting by about $15,000, if memory serves. Axon is working with us to give us a payment plan, basically divide this cost over the next 5 years, and that cost is already, the first tranche of payment is already included in our draft operating budget for next year. So we're already moving forward and have basically put these numbers in, assuming that we'll be on that payment plan going forward. But this would allow us to move forward with this purchase and replace the units. I think the units are 10 years old, if memory serves. And basically, they're not serviceable anymore, and the parts are hard to source.
Move to approve.
Second. All right, we have a motion for Mr. Detting and a second for Mr. Maxfield. Is there any further discussion from members of council? All those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3056 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and thank you, Major Jackson. We'll move on our agenda. Acting Chief, but her title's still Major. Yeah, it still says Major on her shirt. We'll move on to public comment for non-agenda items, of which we have several folks who wish to speak tonight. I'll ask the clerk to clarify, we do have a clock now, so
Yes.
that both the speaker will know what their time remaining is, and it'll be apparent to everyone. And I believe we'll start that after they finish giving us their name and address for clarity. So we'll ask Mr. Tieford to please come up, Dan Tieford of 15 Beatrice Drive. He has a comment for on a non-agenda item, and we welcome you, Dan, and thank you for taking time this evening. Please state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, my name's Dan Tieford, 15 Beatrice Drive. This is just a short thing about the woods behind Beatrice Drive that the Russians have destroyed. As you know, I've been very concerned about the dump that's behind the house or Beatrice Drive there. I contacted Region 5 of the EPA. Right now, their hands are a little bit tied because of the government shutdown, but the base did come out and investigate something back there. I'm not privy to the information yet, but they did come out and check what was back there, and that was a good sign. At least somebody's doing something. So I just wanted to let the city know that something is going on back there, and hopefully we get this straightened out before it gets too bad. Thank you.
Next, we have Tim McGosnell of 12 Beatrice Drive.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Tim Gosnell, 12 Beatrice Drive. I'm going to talk tonight about the storm water runoff fees. I asked the last time I was here 2 weeks ago, the council will look at the fees and kind of try to take a hard look at what they are and what they should be. I did some work on, as far as homework, on what the other folks are charging in the areas. So I'm just going to read you real quick my post. I don't want to have a problem. I would like to invite everyone to the Riverside City Council meeting tonight at 6 p.m. As promised, I did a little more research on the stormwater fee tax that Riverside is enacting. As I stated in the past, feel free to fact check me, as I would never post anything I don't believe to be 100% true. The stormwater fee, parentheses, tax is based on ERU size. Simply put, it is an equivalent residential unit. The value is put on the ERU of square feet of impervious surface. Impervious surfaces are driveways and house roofs. Riverside has decided to enact the highest fee in the surrounding area based on their tier structure. I do not know if council actually looked at the fee structure or just rubber stamped the fees and moved on. As I said, I did some research. Riverside fees are $7 per ERU for up to 2,200 square feet, $12 for 2,000 to 3,999 square feet, and $18 per month for 3,601 square feet and above. Trotwood charges $5 flat straight fee a month, no matter how many square feet you have. Xenia charges $475 per month for ERU up to 2,500 square feet. West Carrollton charges $6 per month no matter the size of the impervious surface. Centerville now, $950 per month for 3,536 square feet, which would be equivalent to our $18. I don't know if you've done any work on this at all. I don't know if you have any intention of doing any work on this at all. I'm asking, please take a look at it. I just think that the fees are excessive to get, and I understood it was $2 million is what Josh said, city manager said last time I was here, that you're gonna draw in revenue. Do we need $2 million? You're taking $2 million out of the fund? I'm not trying to fight, guys. I really am not trying to be mean about this at all. I just want a fair deal. And then the $5 administrative fee on top of that is another $20 a year on top of whatever your ERU is being charged. So a lot of Riverside residents can't afford it. I understand Overlook is suffering pretty bad. And as Dan and I were talking earlier, you know, we don't have sidewalk, we don't have street lights, we don't have city sewer and water. We have police and fire, and you guys do a great job, thank you. But guys, there has to be at some point, you have to take a hard look at what you're trying to do to us. There's a lot of senior citizens in Riverside that just flat cannot afford these fees. Bottom line. So I don't expect an answer tonight, and I'm trying to be respectful. Hopefully everybody understands that. Please look at it. I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna keep coming up here every council meeting until we get something done. And if you have no intention of it, send me a note to my email and tell me you're not gonna do anything about it. If residents come and do something, then residents come and do something.
Thank you, Tim, I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Do you want me to say something on this?
Next, we have Patricia Yates of 4524 Byesville Boulevard. Is Patricia with us? Good evening, Patricia. Thank you for being with us tonight. If you could just state your name and address for the record as you come to the podium.
4524 Byesville.
Thank you.
I just have a simple statement. I just wonder, there's no discount at all for senior citizens on any of these taxes or the trash. But I was just wondering, I'm like him, I was gonna ask, is there some possibility you can look over the fees that you're charging? Because there's no discount for seniors, and we've got high property tax. I've got an 800 square foot house and very little bit of driveway. And I'm in the second structure fee scale instead of the higher or the lowest. I'm in the middle. And I don't understand why my house is half as big as anybody else's around. But the reason I'm asking, there's no discount for seniors. And is there some way that you might at least look at it? You've got until the end of the year before it starts up, maybe you can look at the fees that are being charged, restructure it a little bit, at least look at the size of the house instead of the size of the driveway or whatever. I mean, I don't feel it's fair that I'm paying the middle of the fee scale, but if that's the way it is, that's fine. But I just want to see if there's a possibility you can at least look it over between now and then, and maybe, if nothing else, look it over, whether you do anything or not. But that gives the seniors at least a little bit of a chance.
Thank you, Ms. Yates.
Thank you.
And next, we have Patricia Centers of 61 Colin Kelly Drive.
Hi,
Hi.
Centers, 61 Colin Kelly Drive. I first would like to thank, the board would like to thank Brenda Fry, Councilwoman, for accepting our invitation to the board meeting and able to answer some of our questions. We're still looking for a waiver. Overlook cannot afford these stormwater fees. I want to reiterate what Mr. Gosnell was saying. I worry about money mismanagement. And Riverside needs money, and they're coming after us for it. All of Riverside. The fiasco of that intersection at Woodman and Airway, that will probably have to be fixed after a fatal accident. But we're still looking, and we don't understand why we're being rated as commercial rather than residential. We're residential. There's nothing commercial there. We're not. We're a not-for-profit, affordable housing, Overlook Homes. They can't afford it. We need a waiver. That's pretty much it. But the money, I just wonder where all the money's going, because we're not getting any use out of it. So, thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have James Kinney of 827 Wake Forest.
Good evening. I'm James Kinney from 827 Wake Forest. I'm here representing Overlook Mutual Homes. I am curious what the estimated ERU value for the property held by the city of Riverside is, and what would your charge going to be for the city itself? I'm pretty sure that the city providing the services to maintain the stormwater system won't have a cost. We maintain the stormwater system in Overlook, and I would like to be considered for us also to be waived on the costs. I also would like to thank Ms. Fry for attending the meeting. Y'all have reason to be very proud of her. She was very professional and tolerated with incredible patience the questions that were thrown at her. And that's my comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And the final slip we have is for Ron McClellan of 549 Dundee Circle.
Thank you. Ron McClellan, 549 Dundee Circle. This is a request for a reappeal of a driveway at my daughter's house, and I cannot figure out why. I mean, I know there's codes and everything. I'm the only one in the area that's doing this. I mean, Ms. Holt told me that the second driveway that I would put in would be out of character for the neighborhood. There's two right next door to her that had two driveways. And I've got a list of 10 of them in a half-mile radius of her house that has two driveways. Now, whether they're grandfathered in or not, doesn't make any difference. I'm trying to get the maximum use out of my property, and I'm trying to do it right, but all I'm doing is being stone cold about everything. They won't let me do it just because I have two driveways, I have to cut the curb, whatever. They just don't want me to do it for some reason. I can't figure out why. Again, I'm trying to get rid of a mud pit on the side of the house. It didn't do anything to, as far as the front yard being lessened or anything in size. I've got a 45 by 25 front yard, which is ample cut grass. So I'd just like to see about getting it reappealed, to look into this, to have some wisdom and common sense about getting the full use out of my property. Thank you.
Here's my agenda. All right, we'll move on along our agenda with discussion items, and I believe the city manager has a few of those to cover tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First is just a general sort of announcement. We will be having a rental Help Hub event. So that is October 23rd, which I believe is this coming Thursday, if memory serves. Thank you. From 4 to 7 o'clock here at City Hall. The goal of that program is to help any rental property owners who are out there to learn more about the rental licensing ordinance, what the requirements of that are, and staff will be here to assist folks with registration and answer questions on that. So if you are a landlord in town and you have questions, please feel free to come in person, or you can reach out directly to staff and we'll get those answered for you. Second item we have is budget. Everybody's favorite topic. And actually, we have in parentheses there, including a third quarter financial outlook. So I did want to show a table, and I'll give another plug to the Budget Committee, and there may be some folks in the audience who attend that, and I want to be sure to thank all of them for their participation. Budget Committee meets about monthly. I usually provide a status update on kind of how revenues are looking for the year, what the challenges and obstacles are in the day-to-day, what the state legislative environment looks like. We talk a lot about the lack of marijuana revenues and things of that nature. But I do show a chart, every Budget Committee, and I'm going to apologize in advance for the size of this font because Microsoft Excel is not cooperating with me today. But what this chart shows is our income tax collections over the last 3 years. So the gray bar is collections this year, orange is collections last year, blue is collections the year prior in 2023. We've talked a lot at Budget Committee this year about revenues, income tax revenues in this calendar year, 2025. One of the things to bear in mind when you look at this chart is that one of the primary payers of income tax in our community is the federal government through like defense, through civil servants and other folks who are either employed at the base and live and work in Riverside, et cetera. They get their withholdings for income tax held by DFAS, the Defense Financial Accounting Service, I believe, out of Iowa.
Cleveland.
DFAS, sorry?
Cleveland.
Cleveland, thank you. DFAS makes regular payments to the city quarterly that reflect all of those payroll withholdings for federal employees. Last year, DFAS only paid us 3 times. We actually got the end-of-year payment for 2024 at the beginning of this year. What that means is our income taxes look really, really good, but it's because we got a little money that we were supposed to get last year that hit our books this year. So when you're looking at this chart, the general trend quarter to quarter is that we're about on par or a little bit better than what we brought in prior years. But one of the reasons for this big jump is due to the timing of when these payments hit our books and the ripple effect that that extra payment had at the beginning of the year. Means that we are on track to do pretty well in income tax collections for this year. It remains to be seen whether or not something similar will happen, whether we actually won't get a fourth quarter payment from DFAS and it hits our books next year. All of that is to say, we initially had budgeted about $10.1-ish million in income tax this year. We are likely to do better than that. And I believe Mr. Hartlaub in the write-ups that he does for council every month, they've alluded to, we're likely to land between 10.5, 10.8 million. And that's roughly where we've budgeted income tax going into next year's budget cycle. All that's very encouraging. I did get a good question at the last Budget Committee meeting that I thought would be good to talk about a little bit, which is what is the impact of federal layoffs and the furlough on these income tax numbers? And the answer is we don't know. If the federal government were not shut down right now, then we would be able to look at what's coming into our books in October, November, December, and try to figure out if those revenues are lower, roughly how many folks got laid off at the federal level, and that would roughly how that's reducing our income taxes. What's happened now is that I think it's safe to assume that there were some reductions at the base. We all know that there were reductions. It's safe to assume that our income tax revenues are going to decline a little bit because of those layoffs or the RIFs. And with the added wrinkle that right now, not many folks on the installation are being paid at all. So our collections going forward from the rest of the year are very much up in the air, because until the federal government decides that we're going to start paying federal employees again, that's a big chunk of income taxes that we're not going to see. So this chart, while it is encouraging, and while we are on track to do really well in income tax this year, I think is a good example of how federal policy directly impacts this community. Because as a major source of revenue for us, this is one of those areas where we are in the same boat as everybody else. We just kind of have to live with it until that situation resolves itself and the revenue stream, hopefully, resumes. So we will keep an eye on it and try to unpack that going forward. But the bottom line is, we've got no reason to be concerned about our initial budget or the path that we're on. We will just take a wait-and-see approach as far as federal policy goes, and then do a little bit of analysis early next year to try to figure that out. Any questions on income tax? All right. Okay, so budget. So folks may remember, we used to not have any kind of popular budget book. And so we have, over the last several years, very deliberately, been using a software called ClearGov to compile annual budget books that include all of the key information that a typical budget book should have. And to present that information available on our website so that at a moment's notice, anybody who has questions about how we spend or receive money can go pull it up. And I'm happy to say that the budgets for 24 and 25 2024 and 2025 are both on the website. What we're looking at here is a draft, and I want to stress, it is a draft. What we've done is included the budget assumptions that we talked about at the last meeting into some of the preliminary charts and graphs that I'm going to go through today. What I want to focus on today is just the story about our major funds, because I think we heard some questions from the audience about some of those. And, excuse me, to the extent that this is an ongoing conversation as part of the budget process unfolds, part of the goal of this budget book is to tell the story about where our money comes from and where it's going. You can find a few helpful sections in the 2025 budget that we will build out again, such as an income tax comparison with our neighbors, a property tax comparison. I've not fully fleshed those out, so I don't have them for you this evening. We'll have them at the next meeting. But by and large, the main takeaway for the 2026 budget is when we, especially in thinking about the assumptions that we were talking about last meeting, 2026 is very deliberately a budget that's really, really similar to 2025. There's not a lot of major staffing changes, especially in terms of overall numbers. Some slight reorganization in police, some positions to get us off the ground with utility billing, but the main personnel counts are effectively about the same. And it's a year zero for utility billing in the same way that the income tax change in 2021, 2022 was a year zero in terms of trying to figure out where those collections were going to take us. And the 2026 budget really has two big goals that I'm going to write about in the transmittal letter at the beginning of the budget. The first is to, per council's direction so far, get that utility billing program off the ground, get it up and running, and figure out a way to come to some sort of a solution with RightPoint, whatever that looks like. So the entire 2026 budget is sort of predicated on moving the needle on both of those major items. So we will dive very briefly, and again, I've got the charts and graphs are loaded here. I do also want to let folks know, especially watching at home, that like if you go out and visit 2024 and the 2025 budgets, those are all similarly interactive. You'll see these things popping up here. An important caveat, whenever you see a number for 2025, that is, especially if it's labeled as an actual or a year-to-date number, that number is accurate as of August. The way that ClearGov works is we have to take all of our financial data and export it and then give it to ClearGov, and they put it into their system. So 2025 is a snapshot in time of a particular month. And for the purposes of this draft budget, those budget numbers are from August. But what I think the important thing to look at here in terms of this overall summary chart, this is total expenditures and total revenues across all funds. And again, I think, again, driving home the theme that what we're looking for in 2026 is not substantively that much different than 2024, kind of where we were year to date in 2025. So the overall, in other words, it's sort of steady as she goes. The overall theme here is not trying to rock the boat in the general fund or any of the other major funds that we have going, but we are going to try to get those utility billing funds off the ground.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Could you scroll back to the bar chart? So for 2025, since this is a snapshot as of August, is the expenditures budgeted also prorated for that part of the year? Or were we, as of August, nearing our budget?
I will need to double check with them on how they label that.
Okay.
I would take these 2025 columns with a grain of salt for
Okay.
the time being. My hunch is based on how they the labels are, we will be updating the labels prior to finalizing this budget book. My hunch is that these columns are going to grow slightly
Okay.
to account for the last few months of the year.
Thank you.
And I do need to update this label. This is 2025 through 9/30. I actually believe that's 8/30 based on what a conversation that Larry and I had. So again, the budget book is structured to show folks where the money comes in and where it's going. And the idea here is that we have all the major buckets of funds laid out by category. Taxes would include income and property taxes. And then you have all the other categories, assessments, fees, et cetera. And then when we look at Down in expenditures, it's a very similar story in terms of personal services would be personnel and anything related to personnel. So wages, fringes, benefits, et cetera. Operating costs would be our normal contract costs, utilities, operations and maintenance, those kinds of things. Capital could be anything from replacement fire engines, like we've talked about earlier this year, to road projects, those kinds of items. Transfers are ways that the general fund reaches out to support other funds. In this budget, and in a lot of our prior budgets, transfers have largely been outflows from the general fund. The funds that usually require the most transfer are streets, police, and Right Point. Fire has required some in the past. We do have a budgeted transfer for fire in this budget. The budget is there in case we're fully staffed and our costs are where we expect them to be, throughout the year. But as we all know, people come and go, and we often end the year with some salary savings. We budget for the total amount of people that are authorized to be hired, but if we have vacancies and we're unable to fill them, then that results in a budget savings toward the end of the year. So I do want to dive real quick into the general fund specifically. All right, so once again, our expenses and revenues here are roughly in a fairly stable line, stable pattern compared to prior years. And a full disclosure, ClearGov, thanks to the AI revolution, is now auto-drafting a lot of this text, and one of our jobs is to go through and make sure that all makes sense before it gets published, so that's very much a draft. As far as the general fund goes, again, this $5 million in taxes reflects the modest increases in income and property taxes that we discussed before. And the other major source of revenue in here, miscellaneous revenue, is going to be everything from development and permit fees to other charges and fees that actually end up hitting the general fund. Most of our expenses are in the general fund are actually in transfers. And again, those go out to police, streets, Right Point. There are also some transfers in here related to the utility funds that we will talk about here shortly as well. I do want to show very quickly, though, that if we break out, I think it's in this section. Yeah, so this income and property tax breakout, again, I just wanted to illustrate this budget continues to maintain the split. We're bringing in, we think, about $10.8 million in budgeted income tax next year. 40% of that goes to the general fund, 60% goes to public safety. That 60% gets split right down the middle into police and fire. So this $4.3 million is the general fund's share of that revenue. I also want to point out that we have, in this budget, continued, we talked about this at Budget Committee a little bit too, interest income. So one of the other things that we've been very deliberate about doing over the last several years is making sure that the cash on hand that the city has to be a good steward of is parked at a place where we can earn a respectable amount of interest. And that helps offset the need for additional taxes and other revenues. Some good news on that front is that we currently, there's a program through the state called Star Ohio that a lot of communities around us invest in. We also have a very conservative portfolio at Morgan Stanley. And by law, you're only allowed to buy very conservative bonds, which that's what that Morgan Stanley portfolio is. Some of our accounts are actually holding bonds that have interest rates of 5 or 6%. And since interest rates were cut lately, that basically results in arbitrage, to use a technical term, but it basically means that we're guaranteed to make some revenue on these bonds over and on top of what the stated interest rate is. Having said all that, just to point everybody's attention to, we are budgeting, actually, we may do better than this next year, depending on what the Fed does with interest rates. But this $400,000 is right about where we think we're going to end up for the year based on collections to date in 2025. So again, all part of that effort to make sure that we're trying to be as good of a steward of city funds as possible. If we go to expenditures, I just want to briefly show again here by category. So as in prior years, most of the money that comes into the general fund is going back out of the general fund, and that's in transfers. So almost half of the money that the general fund is spending is going somewhere else. Personal services is going to be everybody and every function and department that's currently in this city hall building, and then all the other costs, except for advances there, are an effort to help pay for those services, the contracts that we have for software, supplies, those sorts of things. Any questions on general fund and basically what the general fund's role in our budget is and continues to be holding up other funds so they remain solvent. So I'll briefly go to the fire fund next. So the fire fund, for the most part, the fire department and the police department are entirely supported by their individual respective funds. Fire gets a little bit of money from other funds, but it's for specific purposes like insurance loss, for example. The fire fund's in really good shape. We budget for a certain proportion of the income tax to go to them, 30% of income taxes to go to fire. The other thing that really is supporting the fire department is our EMS billing program. And you'll remember earlier in the year, we switched EMS billing providers. We're doing much better than the other provider was doing in terms of collecting for fire. That collections rate has enabled this department to lean less than others on transfers in order to remain solvent. But we have budgeted about almost $400,000, so $375,000 in general transfers into the fire department to keep it afloat next year. Of note, too, the property tax line here, that's about $700,000 in property taxes that were inherited from before we incorporated as a city. As far as expenses go, you'll see a very similar story. Most of our expenses in most departments are for people, and it's not much different here. So almost 3/4 go for our full-time personnel, as well as a budget to maintain a complement of part-time firefighters that help fill gaps in our schedule. The capital line here includes a replacement medic, and we intend to replace those medics every 3 years. Or excuse me, they'll have a service life of longer than that. There is one medic budgeted for next year and another medic budgeted 3 years later in the capital plan. And again, operating capital here in the fire department are what it takes to pay for our software, policies, hoses, turnout gear, et cetera. Questions on fire? I'm actually going to skip street for a second. We're going to go to police because that's another more straightforward department to run through here real quick. You will see growth in the police department. That is partly, compared to prior years, that is partly a reflection, and you'll see that really in a lot of the other departments and funds as well. Part of the strength of this software is that it will take our contractual obligations that we've negotiated with the bargaining units and automatically apply those going forward into the out years. So that's part of the reason for this growth. The other reason is that, as we talked about last week and now, we fully budget for every vacancy on the theory that January 1, we could hire for every position. The applicant pool is not always there, but we have the appropriations in place to do it if needed. It is needed. So again, in police, about $4.5 million coming in terms of taxes. That's property and income taxes for the most part, and the breakout is here. Most of the police department's revenue is income tax. That, again, is that 30% split of overall income taxes that we're bringing in. The property tax, this $1.2 million, is the amount that was approved by voters at the last election. So without that approval, this department would be another $1.2 million short. We have a transfer in of $1 million into this fund from the general fund to keep it solvent. And some of these other, you can see these are relatively small figures now compared to millions up here, but these others are placeholders that we use to account for fines, fees, grants that we may get, reimbursements from professional development or other training opportunities. What I will note too, and Angie, I guess will back me up too if I'm talking out of school, when it comes to things like state grants, and this is common in police and in fire, a lot of times these grants will start out fairly aggressively. We'll get X amount of dollars for a school resource officer or for some other position, and then over time, the amount you get awarded from the state gradually goes down and down and down and down until they're basically not funding it anymore. Folks may remember we had a similar thing happen with the victim advocate position that several years back, where that was initially started out as largely state funded and then it basically whittled away to almost nothing. As far as expenses go, get to the relevant pie chart here. So again, most of the police department's expenses are in personal services, about 80%, and that is for all of our budgeted positions, plus benefits and everything else. Operating includes everything from vests and ammunition to, replacement pistols, other things that we need throughout the year. And capital includes the lease program that our cruisers are on. And we are about halfway through that lease program so far. We need about 15 or 16 cruisers to fully staff the police department. And rather than buy large chunks of them all at once and then have very large capital bills when they come due for replacement, the lease program gives our officers the assurance that the vehicle they're in is newer and ideally more reliable because it's newer, and will be replaced on a regular cycle. And so we are capturing those costs as part of our capital program there.
Question?
Yep.
The police station, fire station, the expenses associated with where they live, are those in the general fund or in those funds?
It depends on what breaks, but I would say, historically, the fire department's probably shouldered more of that burden than police. And that is in part because the fire department has more revenue coming in through the EMS billing function than police. It also occupies, I believe, a bigger footprint in that building, especially if you count the apparatus bay.
Thank you.
All right, I'll go back to street real quick before we get into everybody's favorite, which is Right Point. So folks may remember last year we had budgeted a significant transfer from the general fund into the street fund. We are able to budget a smaller amount in transfer of general fund support because of the utility billing program, which is why you see these graphs are slightly lower than they've been in prior years. So in '26, the way we've built this budget is the street fund will get some revenue from taxes, and that's mostly motor vehicle and gas taxes. It's about $1 million, 1.1, 1.2 million in motor vehicle gas tax. We have budgeted almost 300,000 in a transfer in to the street fund. And then there are other placeholders here for things like, anybody that's paying on a historical assessment program or for property damages, those sorts of things. But really the bulk of it is the motor vehicle gas tax. Or sorry, that's gasoline tax. Motor vehicles broke out separately down here. And again, the idea of the street fund is that you can only spend these monies on things that directly benefit the streets. So that's personnel, operating, capital, equipment that goes for street maintenance. So when we go down to expenses, we are looking at about 50% in personnel. And the first thing that jumps out at me, and again, part of the conversations that we've had for a couple of years now about how do we alleviate pressure in the general fund and free up more money in the general fund to do more things, is by taking these personnel expenses and dividing them out into the utility fees, because that is work that these workers are performing that the utility fee can help directly pay for. So the budget is set up assuming that we're going to pay for people and our operating costs, and our equipment, and our capital costs, all with these utility fees. And the net effect of that is, this fund needs less money from the general fund next year. So we're holding on to more money in the general fund so we can do more with it in the future. So about 50% of the street fund would go to pay for people. Then you've got about a quarter-ish for operating, a little bit for contract services. And those could be everything from, street striping to the contracts that we pay to buy asphalt, goods, materials, services, traffic control, salt, everybody's favorite. Debt is debt service related to older pieces of equipment that we purchased in prior years. So those are just the normal payments that we're making for that debt. Capital includes, I will double check on that. I believe there's some other heavy equipment, maybe a truck that Beth had requested that's in this budget. But remember that 50% number, because that's lower than the other funds. So when we pivot to, we'll go stormwater next. So this would be the fund that captures the money that's collected for stormwater utility fees. And you'll remember over the years that when we had gone about an exercise about trying to figure out how much money do we need to administer a stormwater program, we had talked over the years about a $2 million target number would get us enough to offset personnel costs into the stormwater fund with enough left over to then go do a major capital project or two. And so the stormwater fee is then calculated based on trying to get to that target number so that we can administer our program successfully. The alternative would be if you are collecting an amount that is too low, then it creates other trade-offs. So you may only collect enough in stormwater to pay for just people but not do any capital work. Or you may be able to do the capital work but not pay for any people, and then you have to have the general fund give more money to the stormwater fund in order to pay folks to go do the work. So this whole budget is predicated on the idea that due to our research over the years that we've been talking about this, that was the target amount that we would need in order to do this program successfully. So what that means is, and we've made some assumptions here. So I just said the word $2 million. What you'll notice is that there's only 1.4 million in fees here. That's because, I think we talked about it a little bit last time, we are assuming that since we're starting billing in April, and this is a new program, we're not going to collect all of that money in the first year. So this is an educated assumption. This is the year zero assumption about what we feel is a reasonable estimate in terms of what we're likely to actually collect over the course of the year. And for the record, the city will be paying, because the city does pay this fee. Not all cities do, but we will. Oops. It's around $28,000 in stormwater utility fees that the city will pay out of its utility lines into this fund. So we also have skin in the game, if you will, as far as how we're budgeting for this. The advance is $250,000 that will come out of the general fund to get this fund off of the ground at the beginning of the year, that ideally gets returned to the general fund at the end of the year. The reason we can use an advance is because we are self-administering this program. It's our staff, it's our equipment, it's our time. And so ideally, as the year goes on, we'll collect enough revenue where that money can be returned back to the general fund. You'll notice here that personal services are again going to be a significant expense driver in this fund. But the bulk of it is actually capital. So remember how we talked about in the street fund, 50% of that fund goes to personal services. We're going to pay for about 25% of the stormwater fund will go to personal services, and that will pay for about 20% of the salaries in the public service department. The remainder of this fund is allocated for, that transfer is the advance back out to the general fund. Contract services are the amounts that we will have to pay for our software, for our relationships with our stormwater partners at the county, for basically things that the general fund is paying for now. effectively that we can build to the stormwater fund going forward. And then the bulk of this amount is capital. So what the policy decision that we have arrived at over the years, again, that we've been talking about this, has been to create a fund that builds enough reserves so that substantive projects can be done. And in order to do that, you need a couple $1,000,000. So this budget starts to plant that seed. If the numbers come in the way we're projecting, we have planted a seed here to hit the ground running with major stormwater capital projects. And part of the work that staff is doing is looking at our stormwater master plan from 10 years ago and updating all of the estimated costs associated with those projects. You've
And
also-
that 10-year-old plan identified in the neighborhood of $15 million worth of capital projects that were deferred at the time,
that are now a decade old.
that are now a decade old.
And
Can't imagine they're only $15 million still.
I
That doesn't count maintenance fees on an annual basis.
Correct, and I'll give a gut check number, which is the last time that I plugged $15 million into an inflation calculator, which was probably a year ago. It was more like $18 million in terms of the
I
amount
feel like
that
we'd
we
be
would
lucky
need.
if it was only 18 million.
Well, it's,
but-
inflation hits us all.
But I think it's important for folks to understand that we did a comprehensive stormwater 30-year master plan in 2015 that identified the annual maintenance costs associated with maintaining the citywide stormwater infrastructure and the deferred capital projects that in some cases were critical,
Right.
of which that was to the tune of about $15 million, if not more.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to drive home that these, as we've discussed, this is a way of creating a direct funding source for those projects. This is the kind of revenue that if the city decided to in the future, you could issue bonds against in order to do more projects more quickly, because you'd have a dedicated funding stream coming in to pay that debt service. But for this amount of money, there's nothing in the general fund left to give. This is the new money coming in that funds this program. If this money doesn't come in, there is no program. We're back to where we were 2 years ago or last year or this year, where the general fund is paying basically for what we have, and that's it. Can't do any more. And it's a big strain on the general fund to do that. There's a similar story here in solid waste. So again, this will be the first year the city has started a solid waste program. You'll notice these bars are roughly equal, which is the intent. So in solid waste, this is where the city will step in to be the middle person, if you will, rather than basically be the payer to a hauler in order to ideally get a higher level of service from our hauler. So again, similar to stormwater, this $900,000 represents what we think we're likely to collect. It is not the full amount of the contract. We are assuming that this fund will need $625,000 from the general fund, and that will be a transfer, meaning we're not expecting to collect enough to pay that back. The reason for that is we will pay the hauler in January, and that's a monthly payment. So we're not going to have collections in until April, May, so we have several months of payments to the hauler that we'll need to make first. And so this is very much a get this fund off of the ground, and we'll have to wait and see how our collections go. But ideally, this transfer is a one-time setup cost, if you will, to get this fund off the ground. And next year, that's $625,000 that's back in the general fund that we can go use and apply for other things and other purposes. So that's what we mean when we say year zero startup cost. On the expense side, sorry, there's a lot of very circular pie charts in this model. On the expense side,
In some way, all pie charts are circular.
thank you.
You're doing great,
In
Josh.
some way, I suppose. All right, so in this model, or in this fund, excuse me, personal services, that $78,000 pays for a portion of the utility billing administrator's personal services costs, as well as a portion of the costs that will pay someone at the front desk to help assist with payment intake and everything else. So again, the idea here, the through line that we've talked about, is trying to accurately spread these costs out, and among these funds while staying true to the color of money. We can only spend blue dollars on blue things and green dollars on green things, and stormwater for stormwater, solid waste for solid waste. And doing that exercise frees up more money, in the general fund particularly, for us to be more effective. The major expense in this fund is the contract. So that contract service cost is the cost that we will pay to Rumpke, plus this fund's share of the software for utility billing that we're going to pay every year, the printing costs, et cetera, et cetera. But this fund is much more of a straightforward in and out calculation, because we basically know what our major charge is going to be from the hauler, and that's going to be divided over a 12-month period. And we are not out doing the hauling and the collecting of the trash. Thankfully, we don't have to service trash trucks, because that's a nightmare. Any questions on stormwater solid waste? So I think, again, the idea here being that the Public Service Department in this budget, really for the first time, has the benefit of being able to allocate costs across multiple departments in a way that reduce the reliance on the general fund, especially in the out years. We're going to go through a process in 2026 where we're getting all of this off the ground, and then by hopefully third, fourth quarter going into next budget year, we'll know a lot more about what our actual collections are and how that'll impact the budget for 2027.
The solid waste contract that we had, is that for multiple years, or is that for 1 year, or with Rumpke?
The contract's for multiple years with options to renew. This amount is just next year's costs.
Okay. So in 5 years, we'll have to take it out for bid again. Is that a true statement?
Correct. I think it's
Okay.
5. All right, last but not least, Right Point. All right, so again, like I mentioned at the beginning, this budget is predicated on 2 main things. Let's get the utility billing off the ground, and pay attention to where that goes as a year 0 project. The second thing is this council has made proactive decisions to invest in these buildings, which have enabled me to go have conversations with some folks who might be interested in these buildings when they wouldn't have a year ago. And I was told that 2 weeks ago, actually, in a conversation that I had. So the idea being, now that these investments have been made and we can actually market the buildings in a way that's substantive, let's try to do that and land someplace next year on some solution for the buildings. So having said that, Right Point is not, in terms of the dollars and cents here, it's not that different from prior years. The idea, again, as we talked about last time, is to continue to pay the debt down by about 5%, watch the revenue coming in from tenants, and then use the investments that we've made to go have a conversation with local, regional, and if push comes to shove, some other partners from out of state to try to get to a deal on the buildings. So again, I want to emphasize the way the Right Point debt works is we have a whole lot of money that comes in every year. So we're expecting to sell about $6.1 million in bonds, or excuse me, the bond anticipation notes. We'll have some money coming in from rents and leases, and the general fund will contribute some money. And then we will turn right around and repay some of the debt for the bonds that we took out last year. And then we will pay about $500,000-ish in operating costs, et cetera. Sorry, that was another revenue chart. I apologize. I didn't go far enough. Here we go. So, sorry, we will turn right around and repay the debt plus interest from last year. We'll pay our share of operating costs. And then the contract services here are just what it takes to keep the janitors in place, the grounds mowed, the snow plowed, the lights on, et cetera, et cetera. So that is basically the breakdown of Right Point. There's not a whole lot moving inside the Right Point fund aside from keep it stable so that we can go try to cut a deal. And then we will hopefully be having other conversations about that well before we get into the 2027 budget if I have my way. But I'm just one guy in the corner of the office. So we're doing what we can.
So just to be exceptionally clear, that debt, that $6.7 million in debt, that's not interest, or it is, we are taking out a one-year loan and then we're paying the one-year loan.
Right. We will take out a one-year loan of about 6.1 to repay the one-year loan of about 6.8.
And we don't pay $6 million a year, every year in
Well,
cash.
we roll it.
We roll, exactly.
We have 6 million coming in, and then it basically goes, it literally happens in a 12-hour period.
It's like refinancing your mortgage
Every year.
Every year.
Every year, and it happens over a 12-hour period where I come in the office one day and I sit down with Larry and the finance guys, and it's like, okay, today you're gonna get the money. And then I come in 12, 24 hours later, today you're gonna send the money, and it's 2 wires.
Yep.
But it's money in, money out.
Yep.
Every year. So again, I wanted to be able to show and articulate at a high level, this is how the major funds in our budget are working together to preserve our ability to do things in the future, especially inside the general fund. And what we're going to continue to work on over the next couple of weeks is all the narratives associated with this. We'll flesh out the departments. We will flesh out the capital improvement plan. I actually have a bug request in with them for something I need them to look at. And Larry in finance is again, just updating the debt service schedules. Those are all also in the 2025 budget that are online as well. We're just updating them for this year. So what I intend to do is come back to you at the next meeting in November with, this budget book should be 99% of the way there. And we will also have the accompanying appropriation ordinance. And so I'll be happy to show off any of the other sections at that time. And if you would have the option to read the ordinance for the first time, or we can move that to the second meeting in November. But we have a little bit of flexibility as far as when that gets read going forward from here.
What was your start date in the city?
Sorry?
Do you remember your start date, what day that was?
Me personally, October 18th, 2021.
It's almost a year ago today.
Is it?
Or 4 years ago
Well,
today,
yeah.
that I would have caught you in the parking lot as a council member-elect and welcomed you to the city. And I think one of the first things I said to you was like, hey, Josh, my name is Zach.
You probably did say that first.
Good start.
We're going to get a new ERP system. I think that was like the first thing that I like said to you outside of the parking lot. And now I'm sitting here 4 years later, and that we, as bleak as it may seem, the fact that we've been able to be presented with this budget and the way that we've been presented with it tonight is nothing short of a Herculean effort done by you and the finance team. And from the bottom of my nerdy financial heart, I thank you for that. This has been the reason why I ran for council in the first place. Is to not that I was going to have the answer on how to fix this, is that we needed to know that the problem existed, and I think we do now, more so than we ever have in the past. There's a lot of numbers on the screen, a lot of pie charts, a lot of things that seem really complicated, but at the end of the day, this really isn't hard to understand. What we look at here, the city operates with nuance, just like a business does, right? We have customers, be it the residents, we are customers of the product that we produce, and we have 4 major functions of a business of the product that we sell: police services, fire services, street services, and administrative services, right? And that's what it takes to run this business of the city. We are the board of directors voted in by you all, shareholders of the company, and that's the CEO. We have 2 employees, a CEO and a law director, and that's what you elect a council to oversee the performance of these 2 individuals here and then run this organization. What I'm looking at by the numbers that Josh presented to me is that, or to us at this board, is that we have a structural deficit of about $2.145 million year over year. So while the general fund is transferring out $3 million next year, the structural part of that is about $2 million. So this is the reason why we come for levies. It's not because like we are the consumers of the product that we produce. I have to pay the same income tax, the same property tax as you all do, same percentage. So my husband does, my grandmother-in-law does, my uncle-in-law does. I have family and friends who we make these decisions, and I know it's going to impact them as well. But however we got here, we did. We can only chart forward, and the only way forward is that the city needs to come up with ways to generate revenue. Josh has done a phenomenal job. I posted it on Facebook. I'll say it again, that one of the best decisions I've ever made in my professional career was to hire him for the city of Riverside. We have an understanding of what the problem is. We asked Josh a lot when he first came in here to fix a city that had these structural problems, and he's done a damn good job of doing that. So Josh, thank you for this. Thank you for reading this budget book, and thank you for the progress you've made over the last few years.
I certainly appreciate that, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that I've only been able to carry this torch to the extent that I've had an excellent and very forgiving staff who have been with me every step of the way and really doing their part every day behind the scenes to help make this happen. So we really we're very fortunate to have a really dedicated group of employees, and I'm really proud of the team that we have.
We'll move on to the always brief other
I do
items.
have a
Oh, wait,
question.
Brenda has a question. My apologies. Go right ahead.
So this is budget workshop number 1. Will the next budget workshop include the items from the strategic plan that we will be funding with the next year's budget?
That'll all be built out as part of yes, and ideally I'll have that to you before we actually meet in the next week's meeting. But yes, that's all going to be drafted as part of the new narratives that will go in.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else on budget items?
I would like to say that at least we can understand this budget. Years ago, we couldn't, we can see it, we have pictures, we understand, and it shows years ago, we got a
It's accounting.
accounting printout sheet, and you had to jump around to figure out what was trading for where, and it was just ridiculous to try and figure it out. So thank you, Josh, for making it understandable to us to be able to understand what the budget really is.
My pleasure.
Other items.
And as far as other items go, I do want to give the Budget Committee another shout out, and because they are honestly an excellent sanity check for me, just in terms of trying to help explain what we're seeing, going on in terms of the patterns and where we're at with this budget. They're a great sounding board. I know there are several folks in the audience tonight. I do want to thank all of them, and really just those are open meetings. They're typically the second Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock. We meet in the front conference room. Anybody is welcome to join those. And they're very casual conversations about the ins and outs of the numbers that we're looking at here today. So thanks to all the folks out there who helped me out, and anybody else who wants to attend those. You're welcome to come. The more the merrier, and happy to keep telling our story.
All right. Any other items under other items?
Nope.
It was single item then.
Other
Good.
item.
Other item.
Yep.
We'll move into council member discussion. If there's any member of council that has comment or anything they'd like to talk about before we move on our agenda, I want to make sure folks know we do have an executive session on the agenda for this evening that we will go into after council member discussion. So any council members that want to let us know about anything going on in the community?
I just want to, I want to personally and publicly thank the police department in Dayton, Kentucky. Reason I say that is because many of you guys heard this past, it was Friday, one of our citizens, a lady by the name of Brenda Morris, suffering from some Alzheimer's dementia issues, ended up getting in her car and taking a drive, thinking she was going to work, and I'm sure you saw the reports on WHIO and everything else about the missing persons report. So a flock camera caught her going south in Sharonville, and she actually ran out of gas in Dayton, Kentucky. And the Dayton, Kentucky Police Department was able to identify her and was able to get her home safe. So I just want to publicly thank them for bringing one of our citizens home safe. Dear sweet lady, I know her very well. She goes to our church. And yeah, I just want to personally thank them and thank you for bringing her home.
Absolutely.
I wanted to thank 937 for the trunk or treat that they held in the rain last Sunday night. Went on without a hitch, I understand, in Community Park, and thank them for that. And remember that the Christmas Home for Holidays is coming up the second Sunday in November, and they're looking for vendors and help.
Yeah, and I just want to thank all of our community organizations that's held trunk or treats over the past weekend. I know the Riverside Community Organization did, as well as in 937 Barbershop, as well as the Mad River Football Organization held a trunk or treat too. All those activities that you do for our community, it's greatly appreciated. I know our community appreciates it, our youth appreciates it. It gives them opportunity to not cause mischief and have some fun, and I'd rather give them candy than go out and get into trouble. So thank you for doing that and organizing that, because I know it's not easy. So thank you.
So the item that I have is, as our guest from Overlook mentioned, I attended their business meeting last weekend. First of all, I want to commend them. They were, while they were very passionate, they were very respectful, and it was a good conversation, a good exchange of ideas. One of the things that I took from that meeting is that the concern that they brought forward is the fairness of the fee, the stormwater fee, when we may, because they are privately owned, they are maintaining their own streets. And so I know when we determined this fee structure, we split it into two categories, residential and commercial. And I think that they're an example of where it's not as clear cut. So my request to council is that we take their feedback and look at it and see if reevaluate the structure to see if the fairness is there or not, and if there are ways to structure the fee that does provide maximum fairness to the community.
100% agreed.
All right.
The in-crowd is not going to be tomorrow night. It's going to be next Tuesday night, because it's going to be at the Eintraut Club, and they have a water main break, and they were due to host it tomorrow night, and they changed it to next Tuesday, just so everybody's aware.
And still welcome to attend if they weren't available tomorrow night, be available next Tuesday night.
Yep.
Get hold of the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. Well, at this time, I will ask if there's a motion to go into executive session for the reason listed.
Second.
Mr. Maxfield has made a motion. Mr. Joseph has made a second to go into executive session for the reason listed on the agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Denning?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Ms. Lomatch?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes. We are in executive at 7:14 PM. Thank you.